Hi, everybody. This was our trip to the canyons, Bryce and Grand Canyon. So first I had to do some wiring on the car so that we could tow a trailer. And we left on Friday, got to Palm Springs, and then in the morning we continued to Phoenix in Arizona, where we picked up our travel trailer. We stopped at some points along the way and were surprised at the low price of gas in Arizona. So this is Shorty, only 18 feet long, or 5.3 meters. This was a candy that we really liked, some sweet and sour vines. They kind of made the trip for us. And the first night we tried to sleep here, but Oliver thought it was too dark, so we backtracked about 7 miles to the Walmart parking lot, which proved to be a bad place to stay since they were leaf blowing all night. That's the inside. We have a sink, a 2-burner stove, and of course a shower, and a toilet was there as well, and we could convert the table into a bed. So this is our second day breakfast. Nicole always made some delicious food for us. And when we got to Camp Verde, it was raining, even though it had been like 90 degrees the night before. So we got soaking wet, which Oliver enjoyed. And we got to see Montezuma Castle, which is what you see on the screen now.
Go!
And there's Oliver, jumping through the puddles. So we continued on, found some even cheaper gas, and at the Indian reservation along the way, and continued toward the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And we got Order 66 at the Burger King right when we were on Route 66. Here's a view before we got to Horseshoe Bend. You can see our whole rig, and this is what Horseshoe Bend looks like, which now costs $10 because the parking lot has toilets and the infrastructure is much improved. This is Horseshoe Bend, a really cool place to see the canyon from. We even got to look down deep and see some kayaks. And Oliver was, of course, on the edge all the time, just like some other people that were there to take in the view and to take some dangerous photos on the edge. There's Oliver in a crevice, and there's Oliver on a perch. So we got to take a nice little picture. Well, we got some people to take a nice picture of us. And then we continued on after watching the sunset. We found our next campsite after dark, and Nicole cooked these amazing beef stroganoff concoction, and this is where we woke up. Marble Canyon. As you can see, a wonderful place to wake up, about 500 yards off the freeway. And I almost forgot the generator when we left. So this is near the North Rim, where we found some burnt areas that had gone through some rejuvenation in the last year or so by aspen trees trying to claim this area for themselves. And here we are at the parking lot at the North Rim. We got to see into the canyon from the north and even visit the post office at the lodge. This is an observation platform from at the lodge, and this is what the lodge at the North Rim looks like. It's actually quite large, and they have cabins there that you can rent as well. So this is how we spent our day, wandering about and posing for pictures. And yeah, this is a spectacular view of the grandeur of the Grand Canyon. Of course, some of the observation points were very busy with tourists, so we had to slow down here and there. But absolutely spectacular views. We also got to go on a little hike along the rim there, and those are some aspen trees, as you can see. This was a book that Nicole really, really wanted to get because she couldn't stop talking about people falling into the canyon. And there we were getting some water that was pumped fresh from the bottom of the canyon. And this is a place that we were told by one of the volunteers about. It's a fire road just outside the park where you can be very close to the canyon edge. And we found this place for the night with more aspen trees. No cell coverage, miles away from anything. We actually heard thunder that night while we were eating our gnocchi with basil, with pesto sauce that Nicole made out of the basil from our planter. And this is where we woke up in the morning. It was a difficult place to get through, only a dirt road, but the views were absolutely spectacular and worth it. And we found out that it had hailed just 2 miles from where we had stayed the night. But we had no trouble getting back out. Then we made it into Utah, traveling toward Bryce Canyon. We passed through Red Rock Canyon before we got to Bryce and got to see some really, really cool formations at the Visitor Center that explain how the Grand Canyon was formed, and the whole Grand Staircase Escalante Plateau was shown in great detail in a model. Here we are on the 17-mile scenic drive along the edge of Bryce Canyon, and we noticed that there were many, many license plates from all over the US, and we managed to get 38 out of 50 over the entire rest of the trip, of course, not just in Bryce. Toward the evening, we returned back. In the afternoon, we returned back to the main part of Bryce. We had to abandon our trailer because you can't take that into the park. So there was overflow parking where we left it, and we were able to take a little hike down inside Bryce Canyon on the Wall Street Loop, I believe it's called. And you will see that it has some spectacular descents and views of the hoodoos, which is what these vertical stalagmite like formations are called. And this is where we went down into the loop. Only 2 miles, of which, of course, half of it is downhill, which is great, but the other half is uphill, and that gets to be a little bit steep, so we even had to hurry toward the end to make it out of there. Please note the tree that grows inside this canyon. Really a fabulous view to behold. And this was a formation that Oliver really liked, with the balanced rock. And there was a vista point where we had stopped before to take a look into the canyon. And this is what it looks like in winter, but we didn't get to see that, since it was the last week of September and the first days of October. And as you can see, it's starting to get a little bit later and darker, and we barely made it out before dark. And we get to stay here in this fabulous little off-the-road campsite, free again, with a little fire ring. And we had another great dinner, which I didn't photograph this time. We used the campsite here for a dump site because we had to empty our trailer's black water. And they had some really cool information panels for hikers, bikers, and everybody, including even an elevation profile. Then we stopped at a souvenir shop where I had stopped 5 years earlier when I was here with Ben and the group. And this is where we had lunch. We stopped overlooking this plateau before we drove down this road that you can see very far in the distance, this long black line. And this is when we got to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, just before 6 on our second to last day with the trailer. We got to see what the sunset looks like, and then we rushed to Tusayan, to the IMAX theater, so that we can see the movie about the Grand Canyon, which I highly recommend everybody see. We even saw some deer that evening. There's a map of the Grand Canyon and what the South Rim infrastructure looks like. And those are the 7 wonders of the world that one can visit. The Grand Canyon is one of them. Here's a little fireplace in a tin and some local beers that I sampled that evening. We had pizza too. And this is where we woke up. Again, a fire road with a fire circle, and the locals drove down this road like it was nobody's business. And there you can see our sleeping / eating area. And there's the inside of the trailer one more time. This time we didn't need the air conditioner. For the last few nights we actually had to use the heater to stay nice and warm. And there you can see a view of the bathroom and the 2-burner stove. And then we spent the day on the rim of the Grand Canyon at the South Rim, taking some really spectacular photos, visiting the Geological Museum, and taking the million-year rim trail after seeing some deer early in the morning and having breakfast first, of course. Then we embarked on our trail. This here is the Geological Museum, where they also had some artwork that was done by local artists exhibited. And we got to see all these markers that were taking us with every step further back in time. And they had geological exhibits and rocks taken from various depths of the canyon and displayed along the trail. And of course there were gift shops too. Yeah, it was my 4th visit to the Grand Canyon, and Nicole and Oliver had never been, so I felt it was a great opportunity to take that week that Oliver had off from school and show them this great wonder of the earth. The Grand Canyon is located about 1 million steps from the Pacific Ocean. That was quite something. And here you can see all the various rocks in the same orientation that the Grand Canyon has them in its edges. The same way they are exposed. You can look almost 6 million years down to the very, very first rock. And here's one of those pieces of stone that has been brought up from the canyon to show. And there's Oliver in a tree. And this is the Bright Angel Trail with Indian Camp visible, which is the last place you can get water when you're going rim to rim. We also opted to go and take the shuttle bus to Hermit's Rest and stopped off here and there to take in more views of the Grand Canyon. Hermit's Rest has an amazing fireplace, which is ginormous, and we had ice cream there. And we returned to the South Rim Village to take a few steps down the Bright Angel Trail, so that we can say we at least hiked it a little bit. but we only walked about 20 minutes down. Please notice there's a person standing up on top, which is also not the safest, but we didn't hear of anybody dying on the days we were visiting the Grand Canyon. This is how far down we got on the Bright Angel Trail. Yeah, we got to see cloudy views and a little bit of the sunset through the trees from the parking lot. This is where we spent the night, at a proper RV camping site, so we could clean up the trailer and empty it out and fill it with water so we could return it better than we had picked it up to the rental place. And this was the day when we were heading back south to Phoenix to return the trailer. Here are some saguaro cactus, and then we had to say goodbye to Shorty, but our gas mileage greatly improved from that moment on. And we get to visit our friends who live in Scottsdale, which is kind of a suburb of Phoenix, and they live on a beautiful golf course called the Boulders that has all kinds of beautiful houses on a golf course, and of course a bunch of cacti, all kinds. And they were not naturally there, even though you might think so. They were all brought here as landscaping for this amazing golf resort. You might have seen some golf balls embedded in those saguaro cactus, because when they are placed near the tee, a lot of golfers end up hitting them, and some of the golf balls get stuck in the cactus, which are, by the way, quite expensive and to relocate. There was a wild pig that we saw on our morning walk the next morning before we left our friends, and we got to see the main big boulder and a hotel that had their cabins built right up against the rock. This is Palo Verde, a green tree, and a view from above over the greater Phoenix, Scottsdale area. Here are some details of these cacti that are planted meticulously all over the golf course. It's easy to lose a ball here because nobody wants to go and venture into these prickly bushes to retrieve their stray golf balls. And after leaving our friends, we headed toward California and back to our state. We stopped in Wickenburg because there was a fabulous old locomotive and some really nice history how the railroad had connected this town to the rest of the country back in the day. And our final stop was Joshua Tree National Park, which had some amazing field of these cacti that seemed to glow. They have these thin needles, and it seems almost like they're glowing because they're semi-translucent and give them this halo glow. And finally, after driving for about an hour through the park, we saw our first Joshua tree, and I was really, really happy because Nicole was asking, where are they, those Joshua trees? But here they are in all their glory. And there was some really fabulous climbing to be done here as well. Oliver enjoyed bouldering and climbing anything and everything he could get up on, including these crevices. He didn't quite make it to the top, but I came along just to make sure he was being safe. Yes, these boulders were quite fantastic. I enjoyed scrambling up and down them as well. Here are our last views of the Joshua trees before we started heading back north to Salinas to pick up Chloe, who's not in this video. Hope you enjoyed the trip with us.